What's up, guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're returning, if you're a new friend here, my name is Devontae Kelly, and I'm a first grade teacher in the Tennessee area. And if you've read the title of this video, it is going to be all about small groups. So I'm going to be talking to you about first what assessments I give to put my kids into small groups. I'm going to tell you how I sort my kids into small groups. I'm going to talk about what I do in my small groups with the lessons, and I'm also going to talk about what the other kids are doing in the room when I'm not meeting with them. So I'm not gonna waste your time. Let's get right into it. So before I can even start getting my kids into their small groups, I have to take a couple of different assessments known as benchmarks. There are a lot that we do in my district, and that's just to see all facets of our kids, so we could see every little bit of what's in their brain. So for this video, I'm really only going to stick to reading. I'm not going to focus on math too much. So for reading, in the state of Tennessee, you have to have a universal screener that has been approved by our state. So the one that we use that's approved by our Tennessee legislators is AIMSweb Plus. So AIMSweb is a universal screener. Every kid takes it, and the assessments that they do phoneme segmentation, they do nonsense word fluency, and they do oral reading fluency, or the ORF. The ORF and the nonsense word fluency are the two that we look at the most to kind of see where kids fall. And we use the scores from that to see who would be in our tier 2 and tier 3 groups for our intervention time. And for the purpose of this video, we call our intervention time boost. So every time I say boost, that's what I'm referring to as our intervention time and our groups that we meet during that time. So how we look at the data, everybody goes through all of the benchmark assessments. We look and see where kids fall on those benchmarks. If there's someone who falls under the 25th percentile, we consider those our tiered friends. So we'll look at who's the lowest of the low. That'll be our tier 3 friends, and then the next ones up from those would be our tier 2 friends. And we fill it up with as many kids as we can. Now, our interventionist also has an EA that works with her. They can both be up to 10 kids. So what we do is we take the 20 lowest kids that do not go to tier 4 resource, because obviously they would not go with them during that time. They go to a resource teacher. So the 20 lowest kids in our classrooms, they will be going to our tier 3 interventionist and the interventionist EA. And then we also have our tier 2 kids, who would be the next 10 from that. So we take the 30 of the lowest kids. The tier 2 kids go to one of our classroom teachers that we designated as the tier 2 teacher. So they'll push in to that room. What that teacher does is their class will push out into other rooms, so that way their room can be designated as the tier room. Kids don't know that. It's not a big deal, because we have so many kids that move around for tier 3, tier 2, for speech, for OT, for language, for all the different stuff. So kids are always moving in and out, so it's not a huge deal. So the 30 lowest in our group, in our grade, go to tier 2 and tier 3. The rest are put in the tier 1 spots, and that's where the rest of us, or the rest of the grade, comes together to work with them. Now, on top of that, we also do some more assessments. There are actually a couple assessments that we do in our reading curriculum called EL Education. And these help us sort our kids into our small groups, also known as our microphase groups. So if you've been learning about the science of reading, you'll know about Aries phases, or Aries microphases, and that's what we use in this curriculum to help us figure out where kids are in their reading journey. And we do a couple of assessments to figure out where they are. So we'll do a spelling inventory just to start. There are a couple of different lists that we go through that are based on phase. So you have the pre-alphabetic stage. That means you don't know any letters or sounds, or you're still grasping those letter names and letter sounds. We have the partial list, where you're basically at the beginning of your reading journey. You're learning short vowels and blends and things like that. The next phase is the full phase. In the full phase, that's where you start getting into more challenging phonics patterns like silent E, R-controlled vowels, and things of that sort, vowel teams. And then you move on later into the consolidated phase, and that's where you get into the more complex phonics spellings. You get into like suffix changes and things like that. And then throughout all of the phases, we work in syllabication. So closed syllables, open syllables, magic E, R-controlled vowels, and things like that. So I want to put on the screen right now what those different spelling lists look like. When you look at those lists, you can see the different patterns that are within each phase. And depending on how they score on the list, they'll either move to the next list, or if they don't score enough on that list, they'll move to another test that we do. So when we do the spelling inventory, that's the first one that we do. We always start with the partial list. So there's a certain number of words that you have to get correct on the partial list to either stay on the partial list or move on to the next list, which is the full list. Depending on how many numbers you get correct, going back to the assessment chart that I showed earlier, you'll either be early partial, mid partial, or late partial. So that would be what is your microphase. So your phase is partial. Your microphase would be either early, middle, or late. If you're someone who moves on to the full list, that means you've gotten just about every word on the partial list correct, so you're gonna move on to the next set of words. Most kids really fall in that middle to late partial. That means you got like 7 or 8 words correct, 9 or 10 words correct. If you get 4 or less words on the spelling inventory, what we do is we'll move you to the letter name, letter sound test, which is just, and I'll show on the screen right here, it's just a page that has all the letters, and we go through, what's this letter? What's this sound? What's this letter? What's this sound? So we go through all of the uppercase and lowercase letters just to see if you know the sounds for all of those. After we do the spelling test, we move on to the decoding. So if you scored below 4 or less, you would do the letter name, letter sound. You would not do decoding. If you fail in any of those partial phases, or if you moved on to the full or even consolidated phase, you would do the decoding. And the decoding would look like this. This is where you get a list of words, and you're going to need to read the words automatically. So the scoring on this one is a little bit different too. So depending on how many words you read, and depending on how many words you read automatically, determines where you are in your decoding microphase. So you could either be early partial, middle partial, late partial. If you get all those, then you'll move to early full list, mid full, late full. So it really just depends on how you read automatically. And for this test, it is a little bit trickier because even if you read the word, if it's not automatic, we can't move you to that next phase, because what that tells us is you need more practice with reading that word fluently and automatically. And we're gonna work on that in your small group. So essentially what kids could have are 2 different microphases. They can have a microphase for their spelling, and they can also have a microphase for their decoding. The last test is one that everyone takes, and it's their phonological awareness. And then we see how they score on that. The top score they get on that is 66. And we work on phonological awareness throughout the entire year. So as we progress through the year, every time we hit these benchmarks, winter, fall, winter, spring, we should be seeing increases in their phonological awareness. Now, after we do all those different tests, I know that's a lot, and it's a lot to take in, but like I said earlier, they essentially have 2 different phases. They'll have a phase for spelling, and then they'll also have a phase for decoding. So let's say a kid is in the late partial for their spelling, but they're in middle partial for their decoding. What we would do is we would default to the lowest microphase. So even though that kid had late partial in spelling, we're going to default him back to the middle partial because that's where his deficits lie. And in small groups, these are the certain skills that we'll be working on, so that way he can advance to that next step in his decoding. Even if he can spell it, we want to make sure he can decode those automatically as well. And it also works the opposite. Let's say we have a friend that is early partial in spelling, but they're late partial in decoding. We're still going to default back to that early partial because that's where his deficits lie, is that early partial phase in his spelling. And that's what we work on in small groups. Now we got all those tests out of the way. Now it's time for me to actually look for where my kids fall as far as small groups. So I usually put my kids into 4 to 5 different groups. I find that having a smaller set of kids in a group is more effective for me. And so that's what I do. So I have my 5 groups. I name them every quarter a different name that follows along with our knowledge block in EL. So take, for instance, for this quarter, we're focusing on tools. So all of my small groups are named after tools. So I have hammers, drills, saws, tape measures, and paintbrushes. For quarter 2, when we come back from fall break, they will be changed to different ones. It'll be sun, moon, stars, sky, and earth. So it's just to have it connected to our knowledge blocks. That way it's just more fun, more interactive. When we talk about it in knowledge block, they'll always refer back to that. And it's just an easy way for us to connect our things together, to connect different content areas together. So I have my 5 groups. I put them in their groups. Again, I refer back to their lowest microphase. So obviously my lowest group will be the ones that are like early partial, maybe even pre-alphabetic. My next group would be my friends that are middle partial. My next group would be friends that are late partial. Early and middle full, late full, early consolidated. So that's how I could do my small groups. There might be, in your class, it has happened in my class this year, where I've had a ton of late partials. And what I do is I just take them and I break them up into their 2 groups. So right now, what I have is, in my first group, they're early and mid partial. These 2 groups are late partial. So I have 4 in this group and 6 in this group. My next group is early full. And then my last group is middle and late full. So you might have to do a little bit of finagling to make it work for you. Do it however you need to. But that's how I take the data from their assessments and how I create my small groups. Now we're going to get into what I do during my small groups. And then we'll get into what my other friends are doing when they're not with me. Now, I've shown it again and again and again, and I'm going to show it to you again right now. What I do when I'm making my groups is I go back and look at our assessment conversion chart, because on that assessment conversion chart, it tells me each microphase. And it also tells within each microphase, here are skills that your friends might be needing more support in. So I go back and look at each microphase that my kids are in, and I look back through at their decoding, and I'll go back and look through their spelling to see what are the skills that these specific kids are missing, because there might be some skills in that microphase that they don't need, and I don't want to waste time going over a skill that no one in the group needs. So what I'll do is I'll go through, I'll look at what skills all friends in the group need, or majority of the skills the group needs, and those are the skills that I plan for them to be able to do with me at my table. Now, I'm also going to say that I don't like using my tier 1 curriculum during my boost time. And the reason why is because for a lot of kids, there's a deficit, which means where they're struggling, they've already had that in whole group with this lesson. I don't want to redo the exact same lesson with them again, because obviously that first time did not work. So for my small groups, I use another program. It's called UFly. So here's what the book looks like. It's called UFly Foundations. They also have a great teacher toolbox online. So this manual is about $80. And this manual covers skills from early kindergarten, letter name, letter sound, all the way up to the end of 2nd grade with with complex spelling patterns. So it spans K through 2. So the actual lessons are inside of the book. Lessons look like this. And they have protocols in the front. It tells you, like, the first 40 pages goes over the program, the research behind it, how to use it, how to implement it. So they have great resources in the front. They also have great resources on their YouTube channel as well, with their videos that explain how the program is used. Now, you are going to have to buy the manual because that's the only place that you can get the lessons from. But if you go to their toolbox online, they have a lot of additional resources for you. A lot of additional resources that I pull for my small groups, as well as for their independent work as well. Just to kind of give an idea of how my lesson goes, day 1, we focus on phonological awareness. We do visual and auditory drills with our letters and sounds. We do some blending drills. And then we introduce the new skill for the day. That's what we do on day 1. Day 2, we review that new skill, and then we do some reads and writes. So we do some I do, you do reading, where we're looking for that skill in words. And we're also doing that when we're spelling. Then after that, we do some word work with our manipulative letters. So we go through and do some different chaining and things like that. We learn some irregular words for the week, and then we practice reading and spelling those words. Day 4, we go through our decodable text, and then we do some more word chaining. And then Friday, we do the same thing. We go through the decodable, and then we do more word chaining with that. And then I use that Friday as kind of an assessment on where we are. Do we need to go back through the lesson again, or can we go on to the next lesson? So that's kind of how I do that. You can see in my manual, I have different colored sticky notes on here. These colors actually correspond to my small groups that I have. So that way it's super quick for me to know, okay, my red group, my hammers, this is the lesson that they're on, and I can flip right to that page. My green group and my blue group, this is a skill that they're on. They're on NG. My next group, they're working on TCH and DGE. So it's just an easy way for me to quickly get to the pages that I need to, just a really super easy hack. So that's what I use during my small groups to help with the kids. Some materials that I have at my small group. So I have some circle dots on my table where kids can write. And I also have a little basket. And in that basket are a couple different things that kids might need when we're working at my table. So the most used thing is a marker and eraser, because we're using those circle dots for our word training, for our spelling, for our sentence. That's where they do all their writing on. We also have whisper phones for them to hear themselves while they're reading. One big thing that we focus on when we do our decodable is prosody. Are you reading it at a correct speed? Are you saying your words correctly? Do you sound like a robot, or do you sound like a normal talking person, like you're having a conversation with someone? And that's something that we're working on with every group, not just my lows, not just my highs, but everyone. We work on that. And then I'll occasionally add pencils, glue stick, and crayons if that's a day that we're doing an extra activity. And now we're at the biggest part. What are kids doing when they're not with me? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my slides on the screen for you, because this is how I manage other kids that are not with me. All right, so what you see on the screen right now are my boost rotation slides. How I meet with my groups, I meet with them at 2 different times. Now, my hammer group is going to be my kids that pull out during our actual boost time. So I won't be seeing them, because during that boost time, they'll either be with the interventionist, they'll be with our tier 2 teacher. So for my first rotation, they actually get pulled during a different time with me, which we call our small group time. It's a 30-minute time at the beginning of the day where I can still meet with my tier 2 and tier 3 kids, and they still get their time with the interventionist. We do this because we're mandated by law that this happens. They have to have time with me, and they have to have their time with the interventionist as well. And so I have that time outside of our boost time to meet with them. I also need to meet with them for 30 minutes every day. So for 30 minutes, I have those kids with me, and then everyone else in my other groups, as you can see, they're working on other things. So while I'm meeting with my hammer group for their 30 minutes, my other four groups, they're going to be working on two things. They can either go to their not finished bin, which their not finished bins are going to be their own personal bin where they have unfinished work. So any unfinished work that they have, that's the time for them to get that work completed. So it might be something that we've done whole group. It might be a center during their boost time last week that they didn't get through, or anything like that. And then once they have that done, they can go to Epic. Epic is a free online library that kids have access to throughout the school day. Teachers just have to make a free account for them and the kids, and then they have access to thousands of books. Those are what my other four groups are doing while I'm meeting with my hammers. And again, this is outside of our intervention time or our boost time. So this is when I'm meeting with my hammer group. Once we get done with that 30-minute rotation for our small group time for my hammers, we come back and do our whole group lesson for our whole group phonics and knowledge block. We have our recess time, and then when we come back from recess, we start our actual boost time. So when we start boost, we actually start on rotation 2. And this is where if I have kids who are in tier 2 or tier 3, they go to where they need to go. I take some of the kids that are coming from the other classroom, and then we start our rotations. So as you see, 3 of my groups go to iReady, which is our online component that we use for intervention. You can see I have 3 groups: hammers, tape measures, and brushes. They're on iReady, and they're going to go for 30 minutes. My drills and my saws, they're going to be rotating between me and an independent station. On Mondays, they're going to be either with me or doing accountable independent reading. That's what that AIR is. A is accountable, I is independent, R is reading. That means I'm being accountable. That means I'm doing my job of reading my books. I, independent, I can do it on my own. And then R, I'm going to be actually reading that book. So they'll be going through that for 15 minutes. And what my saws will be doing is they'll be reading their books. And then once they're done reading their books, they'll come and do a reading response sheet. They're super simple, super easy. I got them off of Teachers Pay Teachers. I'll put up on the screen right now what those different ones look like. But it's really going to be just responding to the text that you just read. So it might be a paper about beginning, middle, and end. Draw me a picture and write a sentence about each part of the story. It might be about the plot. What was the plot of the story? It might be, who is your favorite character? What would you rate this story on 0 to 5 stars, and tell me why? So really what this is I'm going to be able to be reading books, and I'm also going to be able to respond to the book as well. So as you can see, my timer at the top, I'm meeting with my drill group for 15 minutes. So my drills are with me. My saws have 15 minutes to do that. And then once that time is up, we move to rotation 3. And here's what rotation 3 looks like. For rotation 3, there's only 2 groups switching, and that's my saws and my drills. They're going to switch spots. My saws are going to stop their accountable reading, and they're going to come to me. And then the drills are going to do the opposite. They're going to leave me, and then they're going to start their airtime. The other 3 groups, hammers, tape measures, and brushes, they're going to stay on iReady for that 3rd rotation. And that's where they're getting their 30 minutes in, because they're taking 2 rotation times to get their iReady done. And it's the same thing. Once we get through rotation 3, we do the big switch where everybody starts to move. And then you see all groups swap. So if you were on iReady, you're going to either be with me or do accountable reading. And if you were with me those first 2 rotations, now it's going to be your turn to do your iReady time. So rotations 4 and 5, drills and saws will be on iReady, and then hammers, brushes, and tape measures will be doing their independent. Now, for rotation 4, tape measures will be with me, hammers and paintbrushes, they'll be doing their accountable reading. I did this purposefully because I want my lowest group to have support from the highest group if they need it. That way, if they need help with doing a response sheet, instead of coming to me, they can ask a friend from the brushes group, and all of my friends in my room all love to help each other, so that's not going to be an issue. We've also had talks about making sure that we're doing what we need to do, showing that initiative. If you need help, yes, I can help you, but then when I'm done giving you that help, I'm going to go back to what I need to do. So great with the pairing of my lowest and highest group. Rotation 5, my brushes and my tape measures are going to swap. And then my hammers for their last rotation, they're not going to come to me because I've already met with them for 30 minutes. They're going to do what the other rotations did when I was with them. They're going to go to their not finished bin and work on their work. And then they're going to go to Epic when they're done or if they don't have anything. And that's how I do my rotations. Now, I do have a set for every day. This one was for Monday. Here's what my Tuesday rotations look like. And again, it's the same setup. It's just going to be that independent work is going to be a little bit different. So you'll see rotation 1, the big 30-minute block, hammers are with me. Everyone else is going to either work on a phonics sheet and then they're going to do their phonics game. So the phonics sheet will be something that's on grade level. It's going to be the skill that we're working on for that week, and it might be something that looks like that, where they have sentences. They're going to be sorting words into categories. Sometimes it's going to be a word search where they're finding words with the skill. Sometimes it's going to be another type of worksheet. I'll have the different versions that I have on. I'll put that on the screen so you can see the variety that I have, and it's just what I feel like they want, that I want them to do at that point. But the main thing is it's going to be on grade level. It's not going to be based on their microphase. It's going to be on grade level. Then, once they're done with that, they can move to a phonics game. Here's what my phonics games look like. They can do either phonics 4 in a row with a partner, or they can do what I call our phonics game board. So I have that up there for them as well. Again, this is the big rotation, small group that's not during boost. When we're done with this one, we'll come back, do some whole group things. We'll go outside. When we come back, then our actual boost starts. Again, it's the same thing. The only thing that really changes is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do already math. And then for your independent work, it's not going to be you're not finished bin or Epic anymore. Now you're going to be working in your actual center bins. When they go to their center bins, this is going to be the stuff that is in their microphase. So Monday, I've introduced all the skills. I've met with each group. I've told them what we're learning in our small groups that week, and we've practiced that a little bit on Monday. On Tuesday, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on those skills independently in our groups. Center being one day is always going to be a word work day. So they're going to be working with words that have the skills that we're using. And again, for rotation 2 and 3, I'm working with just drills and saws. Everybody else is on iReady during that time. For rotation 4, we do the big switch. And then rotation 5 is kind of the same. For rotation 5, the kids that were with me during the hammers group, they're going to be working on things that we've done whole group. Because if you see, on rotation 4, they worked what was in their microphase, and then I still want to see what they're doing in how they're doing whole group as well. And it's the same each day. Wednesday, we're working on center bin 2. Now, for our first rotation, this is still on grade level, so we're going to do a roll and read. This refers back to our high frequency words. I'll show you what that looks like. They just roll the dice. They'll read the word that goes with that number, and then they'll write the word. And then when they're done with that, they'll go to the decodable questions. Our decodable, we read on Tuesday's whole group. On Wednesday, they'll read that decodable again, and then they'll come and do the decodable questions. I'll show you what that page looks like. It's just responding to the text. So they're answering questions about the text. Sometimes it's going to be multiple choice. Sometimes it's going to be fill in the blank. And then at the very end, there is going to be a word search that includes our high frequency words for the week, as well as words that follow the skill that we're learning that week. So you can see that on the screen. And then again, same thing when we come back for a boost. We start with rotation 2. The only difference is we're moving back to reading, and then they're going to be working on center bend 2. Center bend 2 is going to be focused on fluency. So they're going to be different passages that follow the skill that they're learning in their small groups. So I'll show you some examples of what would be in their center 2 bend to focus on fluency. And again, like I said, it follows the same flow. It's very predictable. The kids are going to know what to do. Once we get to rotation 5, again, my hammers, they're not going to come to me again. They're going to go to their roll and read and focus on their high frequency words for the week. Thursday, same thing. They're going to be working on their decodable questions if they did not finish that yesterday. And then they're going to go to their not finished bend. Some friends might not have finished their center 1. Some friends might not have finished their center 2. If they did not finish those, they go in their not finished bend, and now's the time to finish that if they did not. Now, you might be saying, what if they get done with their decodable questions? What if they get done with their not finished bend and there's still time left? At that point, my kids know when you've done all your work in that time, I have an I'm finished poster that they can go to during that time. Or I have options for them that they can choose when they're done. So they can go and do a directed drawing, a mystery picture, they can read a book, they can grab a block bag, they can do their work on writing folder if they want to. So when they get through with these things, they know that they still have more stuff they can choose to go to. But I want to make sure that they're hitting these things first. So once we do our actual boost time, this is where they're hitting their center bend 3. So again, we're moving back to iReady Math for our iReady time. Center bend 3 is going to be focusing on writing. So what that's going to be looking like is they're going to be writing sentences, whether it's they're tracing and copying sentences, or they're going to be writing their own sentences using phonics skills that we're learning that week in their microphase. And again, I'll show you what some of those examples look like. And then for my hammers group, when it's their turn, at the very end, they're going to be working on those decodable questions. Now, when we get to Friday, that's going to look a little bit different. They're still going to be going to iReady. They're still going to be hitting that stuff. But when they come to me, I'm going to be doing more assessment type things. I'm going to be looking at how you're doing with your sight words. How are you doing with our whole group? And how are you doing with our small group stuff as well? So I'll be pulling kids, and they know that during that time, they're still going to be rotating between iReady and independent work, but it looks a little bit different than what the rest of the week looks like. So that's why I don't have a Friday slot. What I'll do is I'll designate certain tables. You're doing iReady. These tables, you're going to go to your not finished bend. And if you are done with your stuff you're not finished bend, go check the poster. What I'll do is I'll check those friends that are working on the independent work, and I'll work on their sight words, their whole group phonics skills, and then their small group phonics skills. And then once I'm done with that, I'll rotate the entire class. So if you were on iReady, now you're going to work on your independent things. If you were independent first, now you're going to go on iReady, and then I'll assess the other half of the class. But that's what my daily boost time looks like with kids working independently. All right, guys, so hopefully I explained that well. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to put in the comments any questions that you have. I'd be more than happy to explain even further if I need to. But that's pretty much it on how I do my small groups. I work on their needed skills that are in their microphase with me. They're working on those skills independently in their centers. We have a good thing going. It's very easy. And I really like how I have it on the Google Slides. Once I hit that present button, I have it to where as soon as I hit present, that timer starts. The kids know where they're going. And once that timer is done and it's time to move to the next rotation, it automatically moves to that next slide. So I'm not having to get up and move anything. It tells the kids exactly where they need to go. And this makes it an easy flow throughout our boost time and our small group time. So If you made it to the end, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like. If you enjoy these videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel. That lets you know every time I post a video. And that's pretty much it. Again, thanks so much for sticking to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.